Hello and welcome to Crimson Gun Gaming. What you can see right now is my Twitch page, and I think this will probably be quite a short video in this sense, but what I wanted to try and understand was one of the things from what I've watched of YouTubers' videos, which I think for the most part has been fairly negative. Although actually, after watching the WAN show from Linus Tech Tips, I think perhaps some people had already expected this to be an issue, that the IPC difference was going to be something that wasn't really possible to overcome just with more cores if the processor didn't actually have full utilization. Now, one of the things I was wondering about is we've seen data where if you turn SMT off, which is multi-threading basically, you gained in performance. Now this happened before, but I wonder if what's part of the problem is that yes, having the extra SMT on does use some of the overhead, which is why there was some loss in performance, but also is it a matter that 16 cores isn't really being fully utilized and actually going to the other end of the spectrum and limiting more of the features on the processor and allowing more of the voltage and the cache to be used by a smaller number of processors on the 1800X might well have actually offered better performance. Now I don't have a chip, so I can't check this. Now as you can see, I've actually messaged AMD regarding this to try and understand whether if what we rather do is drop to 4 cores on, say, water cooling and get a higher overclock. Now, I'm no PC genius and I'm certainly no engineer, and I've never actually done it myself, but I do know that one of the things people have done is disable everything but one core and overclock that one core as much as possible. Now, if you go to that end of the spectrum and you get a much higher clock, so let's say you're sitting, I don't know, 4 gigahertz or 4.1 gigahertz, but suddenly you're now sitting at, I don't know, 4.3 or 4.4, and you've got the 4 cores activated. Are we going to see something that's much closer? Because we already know, or at least it seems pretty obvious, that the more cores you have, the lower the clock goes. It was always a problem. Servers always had very low clocked processors, and if you overclock the processors, they tended to go a lot higher. Now, I wonder if that's because of heat generation and limitations in design of some sort. As I said before, I'm no engineer, but if it's possible to get higher individual core count performance and that impacts the actual gaming performance, would it not be better to have 4 cores rather than 8 cores and see whether SMT with the 4 cores improves performance at that point with a higher clock, or whether just having 4 cores individually, no SMT at all, and overclocking that as much as you possibly can, whether the clock you would get would be substantially increased in any meaningful way that would then affect performance more than just having the extra cores trying to be utilized. Now, if it is that situation, then I think a lot of misjudgment of the current world of processing and video gaming will become an issue. Now, I only know this because I've watched a lot of videos about like going to the extreme with something, like when we saw the AMD overclocking on liquid nitrogen on an individual core and seeing how high that would go. Now, if it's possible to do that, why not do it with 4 cores? And if 4 cores offer better performance in current gaming, is it not possible simply for there to be a patch that comes out that makes it easy for anyone to do this? Now, I don't know whether this is something that can happen, and I'll certainly pursue it where I can, try and find someone who will listen to what I'm suggesting and try it, because are we really giving AMD a fair whack of the stick when by having more cores you're probably likely limiting the clock speed? And while it's better in applications that obviously would use more of those threads, it's certainly detrimental in a situation where you compare it to something that's better optimized for that particular task. It only has 4 cores, it only needs 4 cores, therefore better clock, better performance. It's simple utilization. If you're not using the extra horsepower, it doesn't do anything. So I wonder if we're in a situation where AMD has been incorrectly tested. Is it that they could do more with a lower clocked processor from the binned section? Because obviously the 1800X must be a binned chip with the best silicon to get it up to those consistent overclocks, or those consistent gigahertz. Now, if that was the case, I wonder if it's just a simple misunderstanding of what the chip could do. And obviously, why would AMD say to you, well, don't bother using half the chip, because that would make you think, well, I'll probably go and buy the R3. But that would be misunderstanding of the benefits the extra processors bring. Now, if it is possible to just turn off 4 of the processors and see which alignment of those 4 processors turning off would be better, and taking into account from my understanding of the architecture that the whole cache is accessible by all of the processors, is it then possible to have those 4 processors with a much larger cache access and a higher clock that would lead to better performance, because individual utilization would go up? And I wonder if this is something that needs to be looked into. Anyway, it's just an idea. I appreciate you listening to me, and obviously I appreciate there isn't much going on the screen, but I kind of want this question to be something that people think about, and whether it's something that someone can do something about or test. Anyway, this is Crimson Gun Gaming, and I appreciate you listening to me. Bye.